Народився і виріс на Україні. Я тут навчався, я тут проходив.
The words my land really mean a lot to me. I was born and raised in Ukraine. I studied here, I served in the army here, and I have worked here all my life. This is truly the land that I love. I'm a military man by profession. I graduated from a military school and then a military academy. I retired in 1996. Since then, and for 10 more years prior to that, I was engaged in beekeeping all the time. So a military man chose a new path in life for himself and is paving the path now for a better future. Farmer Vitaliy Nahornyuk owns a honey production and export enterprise on 2 hectares of land. There, a winter hut for bee colonies, a carpentry shop where hives and honeycomb frames are made, a packaging section with a laboratory, and a wax foundation plant. The former military Vitaliy Nahornyuk managed to develop such a business in a matter of 6 years. I did not even expect that I would end up with such an enterprise. I saw an advanced closed cycle, from wood to finished products, beehives, frames, etc. Beekeeping and honey production enterprises in Canada. From the beehives to the final product honey, they pumped it out, process it and export it themselves. And that is what's called a complete closed production cycle. Canada and the US are a classic example in this sphere, so there is something to strive towards. Nahornyuk's bee garden consists of 2,500 bee colonies. In summer, the fluffy workers live on honey-bearing fields. In winter, they live in the hut. 16 people look after them. They move them, build beehives and harvest honey. Vitaliy believes that a true beekeeper must be able to do everything on their own. A beekeeper combines many professions, a driver, a welder, a turner, and a locksmith, and they need it all. Secondly, this is a mandatory prerequisite before becoming highly qualified. Keeping a bee garden and developing bee colonies requires certain veterinary knowledge, while communicating with farmers who till honey fields requires certain diplomacy. A beekeeper unites all that in one person. They have always been highly respected since ancient times. When there was no priest in the village, beekeepers were the ones who married people and buried the deceased. Sometimes beekeepers have to transport hives over hundreds of kilometers, not because of the wrong plants, but to avoid the death of bees. Sprinkling of fields with mineral fertilizers spoils honey. The inspection bodies pay a lot of attention to the indicators of safety and quality of honey. First of all, honey is checked for residues of pesticides and veterinary drugs, which are also used to treat bees. Honey is checked for basic safety indicators. For example, the amount of sugar it contains. For the European market, the principle of so-called traceability is important. If a manufacturer or our exporter wants to supply honey to EU countries, they must document the whole lifetime of honey, from production and through all links, processing, centrifuge, homogenization to the consumer. Vitaliy Nahornyuk's bee garden is industrial. He also deals with wholesale purchases of natural honey for further processing. Product samples are carefully tested in the laboratory. Before honey from beekeepers is used in mass production, we check it and conduct incoming control. First, we check it for antibiotics and conduct physical and chemical analyses. According to the test results, we either give permission to sell this honey source or not. We also check the humidity and the color of the honey. Through pollen analysis, we can determine if it's mono or profilerative honey and its composition. Samples are taken again when honey arrives in buckets. Only then it is used in production. The honey undergoes thawing over the course of 3 days at the temperature of up to 40 degrees. Next, the raw material is poured into a container where the homogenization process begins. In these shiny tanks, it is mixed to the consistency of sour cream to avoid natural crystallization, as they prefer liquid honey abroad. Then it is poured into barrels. This is how honey is prepared for export. it weighs about 21 tons. We're in the shop where honey is purchased from the population and where it is bottled and prepared for export. The whole process takes about 12 hours. It is said that one bee produces less than a tablespoon of honey in its entire life, and we sometimes receive up to 7 to 8 tons a day.
А в нас приймаємо за добу до 7-8 тонн.
Beekeepers who bring honey for export can also purchase wax foundations at Nahornyuk's industrial bee garden, as well as frames for it. One bee colony requires a kilogram of wax foundations every season. It is the basis for healthy and the comfortable life of bees. There is a whole warehouse of those here. The material for their manufacturing is heated wax. Thus, all harmful microorganisms that can harm bees die. With their ready foundation in the hive, bees obviously spend significantly less energy, and it is evident that their productivity tends to increase. We produce 230 millimeters and 300 millimeters of wax foundations for the appropriate frames for them to be installed into beehives. Wax foundations are made of natural wax and are heat-treated. There's a quite high demand for wax foundations. We have been working for 3 to 4 years, and there have been no complaints from clients so far. In Ukraine, 400,000 beekeepers and 67 companies that produce apiary equipment also export their products. Both the former and the latter must comply with international standards and requirements, register their apiary and production facilities, and conduct laboratory studies of honey production. Regardless of whether you have 5 or 1,000 of bee colonies, the regulations are the same. This is not only about the free trade zone between the EU and Ukraine, because there is a document that allows a certain amount of honey to be exported duty-free. Be that as it may, the requirements to the product are established by national legislation of every country. In this case, the Ukrainian Food Safety Service sets the requirements and agrees to them at an expert level. Ukraine is a honey country. Here, honey is produced from sunflowers, acacia, motley grass, and rapeseed. In addition to monofloral honey from one culture, beekeepers also make honey mixtures, flower pollen, propolis, and wax. This amounts to around 10 products that are beneficial to a person's health. The basket of beekeeping products is expanding. Officially, it consists of 8 products: honey, wax, propolis, royal jelly, bee pollen, corbiculae, drone jelly, or homogenate. In addition to that, there is a process of leftovers, tinctures, and various ointments from dead bees, which are used for treatment. There is a pest in beekeeping called a wax moth that eats honeycombs. At the same time, beekeepers have learned how to purposefully use it. They make tinctures that have proved themselves well in apitherapy. Bees are a kind of indicator of the state of the planet ecosystem and a very important factor for human health. They're also our gene pool, believes beekeeper Nahornyuk. The Ukrainian steppe and Carpathian breeds of bees are aboriginal that have been feeding Europe for centuries and fortunately still exist here. So those people who go for trendy breed names, such as European dark bee, a dwarf honeybee, an Italian honeybee or others, do not have a good understanding of this sphere. The leading beekeepers of Europe say that Ukrainians have the foundation of the gene pool, and they must do everything possible to preserve it. Ukraine harvests 100,000 tons of honey a year, which means it is #1 in the world of honey production. The bulk of the production is exported to 35 countries. In 2017, almost 67,000 tons of Ukrainian honey were exported to Poland, Germany, France, the US, and Japan, and Europe received 3/4 of the total. Quotas for the supply of Ukrainian honey have doubled. Our honey exports have been increasing for several years in a row. Ukraine has, so to speak, broke into the top countries of producers and exporters of this sweet product. Last year, we exported almost 68,000 tons of honey, which is more than the previous year. In 2016, the exports were at the level of 57,000 tons. And over the 2 months of this year, according to the statistics we have compiled, we have already exported more than 10,000 tons valued at a total of over $22 million US. So this year, we can also expect to achieve a record in honey exports. Vitaliy Nahornyuk's company has won the confidence of the land of the rising sun in Ukrainian honey. Indeed, the supplies have been stable for 4 years now. As such, Ukrainians have managed to surprise the Japanese. They first used it as a culinary honey, then added it as stuffing for rice cookies, and there was high demand for this product. After that, the Japanese started bottling this honey themselves. You see, they have smaller containers, unlike our 3-liter jars. They have 150-gram jars for one family to have tea or coffee with this honey. The smaller the packaging, the better the preservation of all the nutritional properties of honey. Honeycomb honey and honey bars can be considered eco-honey. Why? Because these products are never ever touched by the human hand during production. Wax foundations are made of wax bars, which are a clean ecological product from acacia and mono honey, not polyfloral honey. Everyone hails it for that fact that it does not crystallize, is of high quality, and is viscose. If you remove these caps, you can eat this honey with a spoon. It is easy to use. These contain 350 grams, and we exported this honey to Japan. About half a ton, or 480 kilograms. But the pricing policy is completely different here. This honey is fairly expensive. They haven't used such technology yet. This is an old technology for Ukraine.
Технології вони такої ще не використовували. У нас на Україні ця технологія досить таки вже, я б сказав, би стара.
And there's the Italian packaging the Beekeeper notes as he continues the tour of his bee garden. It's also a small jar. We've added pine cones to our honey and ended up with honey that is not Ukrainian. Vitaliy knows the demand on the international market and the marketing methods. That is why he stresses the importance of branding and convenient packaging of products.
Це насправді те, що я називаю, знаєте, формуванням нашого.
This is what I call the formation of our Made in Ukraine brand. This is one of my not necessarily dreams, rather one of my professional goals to export our honey. This is not just pouring it into barrels and then mixing it with honey from other countries, so that it would sell as honey from EU countries and non-EU countries. Rather, so it would be sold in jars with the proud inscription Made in Ukraine. Then it will be possible to say that our industry and the ministry have worked effectively. Our Ukrainian honey is appreciated all over the world. But we must now take on an additional cost to bring money to both producers and the state budget as well.
Додаткову додану вартість і створити бренд, який буде дійсно приносити гроші і нашим виробникам, і зрозуміло, що державі також.
Honey is a vital product, Vitaliy Nahornyuk believes. Albert Einstein once said that without bees, mankind would disappear in 4 years. There's a saying, like a bee, it gives both golden honey and has a poisonous stinger. That belongs to Romanian queen and writer Carmen Silva. And Beekeeper Nahornyuk compares beehive foundations with the state arrangement. A beehive is not only a separate colony, but also a state that performs all of its functions. First, the colony protects its inhabitants. That is, there are guard bees, and there are working bees, or drones, which fly in the field and collect nectar in order to feed the entire colony. There is a queen bee, and there are drones. When the time comes to make honey, they all participate so that their beehive would be provided with honey for the winter. And their small state could continue to live a happy and successful life.